Hello, and thank you for checking out another video. Today, I want to talk kind of briefly about tariffs and some of the things that have been in the news recently about the Supreme Court knocking down or shooting down Trump's tariffs. And the world, the market, everyone kind of going into this confusing time period where we don't really know how these refunds are going to happen. We don't really know how everything's going to shake out. And in my opinion, I've been shocked that I haven't heard anyone talk about tariffs and their actual, like, how they're administered and like how they physically work. And I know this is going to be elementary for some of us, but for many of us, I don't know that most people would know this. So I just kind of want to give perspective to like how a tariff is actually structured. Okay, so if you go to the store, let's just pick on Walmart because they're big and everybody's comfortable with them and they're kind of global. So let's pick on Walmart and say that Walmart is selling a couch. Okay. I know this is absurd, but I gave us a graphic depiction here that I'm going to bring into the mix. Okay. Completely absurd and huge. I get this. Okay. Bear with me. Okay. Walmart. Let's say this is Walmart. Tariffs 101. Let's say Walmart is selling this couch, which I know is hideously awful. Sorry, I'm not an artist, and I didn't really want to spend a bunch of time drawing this morning. So let's say this couch costs $100. Retail cost being the key, right? What is retail cost? That means if you go to the store, you buy a product, you're paying a retail cost. You're paying the cost of what that retailer charges you. It's not like you can negotiate with them and get it at their cost, right? They're charging retail prices at their retail establishment. What I think is out of the real mix here when you're talking about retail cost at these businesses is this retail cost is what we see. There's also another cost called a wholesale cost. Okay, that column is over here. A wholesale cost is what some business pays to have their products brought into the marketplace. Okay. The marketplace, in my example, is going to be a United States store. Okay. So let's pick on Walmart and let's say Walmart is importing this couch from China. And let's just say, in order to bring this thing here on a ship across the sea, and to get it here delivered, Walmart is able to acquire this couch that's being sold for $100 to you and I at the store for $10. Okay, $10 is what they might pay. Now, I don't know the exact numbers, you guys. I'm using this as an example and an illustration to give us some perspective on the topic. Okay, these costs are obviously not exactly accurate, but in many businesses, they're not going to be that far off. Okay, and the key is where the tariff is assessed to. Okay. The tariff is not assessed to this retail cost. The tariff is assessed here. Okay. So if we have a 10% tariff, let's just keep it simple. 10% tariff on $100 is going to be $10. That's going to be 10% of the item. A 10% tariff on $10 is going to be $1. In the perspective of the cost of the item, $1 is what? $1 of $100 is 1%. So in the right perspective, tariffs are a fairly nominally small input cost to certain economic transactions. Now, does every transaction have the same profit margins built into it that a couch has? Absolutely not. There's no way. Okay, many food items, we're talking about maybe, I don't know, a couple percent margin. I don't think there's many things that are only a couple percent, but I'm sure there's a lot. Maybe it's 10%. I don't know what the average markup on many grocery items are, but they're going to be much smaller than items like furniture or carpet or things with bigger margins. Okay, so that being said, and that being known, the input costs on these tariffed items are going up. And there's no denying that. This is going to impact that business. But when you think about it with the right perspective, an input cost is it's a big deal, and getting that here is a big deal. But let me just compare that to labor. Okay, just to put into perspective, I'm not familiar with the exact labor rates in Asia, but I have spent a lot of time in Central America, and I love the idea if somebody's going to open a business in using Central American labor rates versus United States labor rates. Okay, in Central America, the labor rates are roughly $2 to $4 an hour. Okay, in the United States, obviously, we know the labor rates are going to be ranged somewhere in between 15 and $25 an hour on the low end. Okay, that is a massive, massive divergence. It's a massive difference in input cost. A 1% cost to bring an item in the door for Walmart probably does not impact their bottom line all that much. Now, does it impact it? Of course, it impacts it. Of course, this is a big deal. But does it impact things anywhere near the same degree that labor costs do? And the answer is no, it does not. Okay. So when it comes to tariffs and when it comes to tariff policies and when it comes to all this banter in the media about tariffs, I think it's our job as consumers to understand that tariffs are a big input cost and they have a big bearing on pricing, especially if they're huge. You know, if you get up to a 100% tariff in my example over here, and your $10 item becomes $20, well, you know, on a retail basis, that's 10% of the cost of the item. But on a wholesale basis, that's the metrics or the metric that we need to keep in mind. Like wholesale is what the tariff is applied to, not retail. And there's a lot of other way bigger costs that we are being forced to pay by the feds that impact, or by our systems that impact our prices. Tariffs are, like I said, they're a big deal, but they're just not as big of a deal as most people are making it out to. I know this video is very common sense. I know this video doesn't really, it's not really earth shattering, but I just don't understand why more people aren't putting tariffs in the right contextual perspective. Because I feel like in the right context, they're just not that big of a deal. I mean, they are in certain situations and for certain businesses, and I don't want to minimize them. But in large, in the big perspective, in the macro economy, yes, they're a big deal. But I think these need to be viewed in the right perspective. I think these things need to be understood for what they are and not understood for what maybe the media is trying to make us feel like they are, because wholesale costs are the key, input costs. And you and I usually do not have a good understanding as to what those are. Like, I don't know what the average wholesale cost of every item that I buy at Walmart is. I don't even know it on a lot of things that I buy on a regular day-to-day basis. It's just not that terribly important to me, and it's not that easy to find. So wholesale costs are the key. Wholesale costs drive tariffs. They drive the real tariff cost. And if wholesale has a big divergence from retail, the tariffs mean a lot less to the importer. So anyways, hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, hit me up.